The Georgia sun was a low, honeyed amber, filtering through the moss-draped oaks that stood like silent sentinels around the Wexler estate. Inside the kitchen, the air was thick, not with the humidity of the South, but with the heavy, sweet scent of roasted sweet potatoes, cinnamon, and nutmeg. Monica Wexler, 62 years of grace and weathered strength, wiped a bead of sweat from her brow with the back of a flour-dusted hand. She moved with a practiced rhythm, a slow, deliberate dance she had performed in this kitchen for 40 years. Her kitchen was a sanctuary of copper pots and cast-iron skillets, each one holding a ghost of a meal past. On the counter sat 4 sweet potato pies, their crusts crimped to perfection, glowing like burnished gold. These weren't just desserts, they were her currency. They were the physical manifestation of her love, a recipe passed down from a grandmother who had known the bitterness of the fields and the sweetness of survival. Monica looked at the pile of envelopes tucked under a ceramic rooster on the side table. At the very top was a legal notice, stamped and finalized, paid in full. It was the final installment of the loan she had taken against her own retirement, the pension she had earned over 30 years of teaching American history to restless teenagers. She had liquidated her savings, signed away her security, and lived on canned soup and garden greens for 3 years just so her son, Greg, could secure the Series A funding for his tech startup in Chicago. "A Wexler man doesn't beg, Mama," Greg had told her 3 years ago, his voice full of that smooth northern ambition that always made her feel a little bit like an outsider in his life. "We build. We own." So she had let him build on her back. She had been the foundation, buried in the Georgia red clay, while he reached for the glass ceilings of the Windy City. The silence of the house was broken by the sharp digital trill of her iPhone. She didn't even have to look at the screen to know who it was. She had assigned a specific ringtone to Greg, a gospel instrumental of amazing grace. "Hey, baby," Monica said, her voice a warm contralto that carried the lilt of the Savannah River. "Mama, you still coming, right?" Greg's voice was hurried, the background noise of Chicago traffic bleeding through the speaker. "The kids won't stop asking. Ruby even drew a picture of your pies for her school project." Monica smiled, her heart giving a little tug at the mention of her granddaughter. "I'm packing the pies right now, Greg. My knees are putting up a fuss with this cold front coming in, but I'll be there. I promised, didn't I?" "Good, good," Greg said, though he sounded distracted. "And listen, Mama, I've got some really important people coming over this year. Investors, people who can take the company global. It's a big deal. Everything needs to be perfect." Monica paused, her hand hovering over a pie box. "Everything will be fine, Greg. I've been hosting Thanksgiving since before you could walk." I know. It's a different world up here, Mama. Anyway, I gotta run. Flight lands at 4. I'll see you then." Monica was about to hang up when she realized the line was still open. Greg hadn't hit the end button. She heard the muffled sound of a car door slamming, and then another voice. Malene, Greg's wife. "Is she definitely coming?" Malene's voice was sharp, cutting through the static. "Yeah, she's coming," Greg replied, his tone shifting from the filial warmth he'd just shown Monica to something flatter, more utilitarian. "Thank God," Malene sighed. "I was terrified I'd have to hire a caterer last minute. Do you know how much a holiday chef costs in this zip code? Plus, the nanny took off for Florida. I need your mother to handle the kitchen and keep the kids out of the way while we're talking to the Blackwell Group. If we land this deal, we never have to cook another meal again." "I know, Mel," Greg said. "She's happy to do it. She lives for this stuff. Just let her feel like she's running the show, and she'll work for 20 hours straight without a complaint." The line clicked dead. Monica stood frozen in the center of her kitchen. The warmth of the ovens suddenly felt stifling. She looked at the 4 pies. She looked at the paid-in-full notice. She lives for this stuff. Is that what he thought? That her labor was a hobby? That her sacrifice was just a lack of anything better to do? She felt a flicker of something she hadn't allowed herself to feel in years. Not anger, not yet, but a cold, clear clarity. It was the same feeling she got when a student tried to lie about why their essay was late. She could see through the cracks in the story. Most women would have called back. Most would have shouted. But Monica Wexler was a daughter of the South, raised by women who knew that the loudest move isn't always the strongest one. She didn't unpack. Instead, she went to her bedroom and opened her jewelry box. At the bottom, wrapped in a piece of velvet, was a heavy gold signet ring that had belonged to her late husband, Arthur. Beside it was a USB drive and a small leather-bound ledger. She packed her best navy blue wool cardigan, the one with the silver buttons. She packed her sensible black heels. And she packed the 4 pies into a reinforced carrier, insulating them with the care one might give to a shipment of diamonds. As she locked the front door of the Georgia house, she looked back at the hallway. The walls were covered in photos of Greg. Greg graduating. Greg's wedding. Greg's first office. There were very few photos of her. She realized then that she had become the cameraman of her own life, always present, but never in the frame. "Well, Greg," she whispered to the empty porch, "you wanted everything to be perfect. Let's see if you can handle the truth." She climbed into the taxi, the weight of the pies on her lap, and headed toward the airport. She was a woman on a mission, but for the first time in 62 years, the mission wasn't to save her son. It was to find herself. The descent into O'Hare International Airport was a turbulent transition from the soft, peach-hued clouds of the south to a jagged, slate-gray reality. As the wheels hit the tarmac, the pilot announced the ground temperature, 22 degrees Fahrenheit. A light dusting of snow, he called it. To Monica, looking out the window at the swirling white vortex against the terminal lights, it looked like a warning. She clutched the pie carrier on her lap like a shield. Her knees throbbed, a deep rhythmic ache that reminded her of every year she'd spent standing on hard classroom floors. She followed the throngs of travelers, her breath hitching as she stepped into the jet bridge where the Chicago wind whistled through the gaps in the corrugated metal. Monica stood at Gate 3A, her eyes scanning the sea of faces. She saw young men in suits, frantic fathers holding toddlers, and teenagers with headphones. She did not see Greg. She checked her phone. No missed calls. She sent a text. "I'm at the gate, baby. It's a bit chilly up here." 10 minutes passed, then 20. The crowd thinned until she was one of the few left standing by the baggage carousel. Finally, her phone buzzed. It wasn't a call. "Greg, hey Mom, caught in a massive strategy session. Blackwell Group arrived early. Look, the city is a mess with the snow. Uber is actually going to be faster than me fighting traffic. I sent a voucher to your app. See you at the house. Use the side door. The catering crates might be blocking the front." Monica stared at the screen. Use the side door. In Georgia, the front door was a statement of welcome. The side door was for the help, the milkman, or the kids coming in with muddy boots. She felt the first real bite of the Chicago cold, and it wasn't coming from the sliding glass doors. The Uber ride was a blur of salt-stained highways and towering skyscrapers that seemed to lean over the car, suffocating the sky. Monica sat in the back, the smell of the driver's cheap air freshener mixing with the sweet scent of her pies. "Big night?" the driver asked, glancing at the carrier. "Thanksgiving," Monica said softly. "Visiting my son." "Nice. Hope they saved you a seat near the heater. It's a hawk out there tonight." When the car pulled up to Greg's home in the affluent suburbs of the North Shore, Monica's breath caught. It was a glass and steel monstrosity, glowing like a lantern against the snow. It was a house built of Series A funding and her liquidated pension. She rolled her suitcase toward the front walk, but as Greg had warned, it was blocked. Huge wooden crates labeled Exquisite Eats Catering and Vintage Vineyards were stacked 3 high. She detoured to the side, her sensible heels slipping on a patch of black ice. She reached the side window, which looked directly into the formal dining room. She stopped. The table of others. Twist 2, the replacement. The room was a masterpiece of cold elegance. Minimalist white candles flickered in crystal holders. A long oak table was set for 20. At the head of the table, the seat Monica usually occupied during her rare visits, sat a woman with hair the color of expensive champagne and a face pulled tight by years of high-end dermatologists. It was Sandra, Malene's mother. Sandra was laughing, holding a glass of dark red wine, gesturing toward a platter of appetizers that looked like tiny works of art. Greg was standing behind her, his hand resting familiarly on Sandra's shoulder. He was leaning in, whispering something that made the whole table erupt in sophisticated laughter. Monica looked down at her hands. She was holding 4 homemade pies in a cardboard carrier. She looked at the guests, men in charcoal turtlenecks and women in silk blouses. She looked at her navy blue cardigan with the silver buttons. She wasn't a guest. She was the backup. She realized with a sickening thud in her chest that Greg hadn't invited her for dinner. He had invited her for the aftermath. He wanted her there to tuck the kids in, to scrub the flour off the counters after the caterers left, and to provide the authentic dessert once the important people had been fed. The decision at the threshold, Monica reached for the side door handle, but then she heard Maline's voice through the cracked kitchen window nearby. "I told the Blackwells the dessert is a family heirloom recipe from the South," Maline was telling a server. "It adds that home-style branding Greg is so obsessed with. Just make sure you plate it on the Wedgwood porcelain. We don't want it looking, well, too rustic." Monica stepped back. The rustic pies felt heavy in her arms. She didn't knock. She didn't call. She walked back to the crates at the front of the house. Carefully, she placed the pie carrier on top of a crate labeled premium caviar. She took out a pen and a scrap of paper from her purse. "Greg," she wrote, "the pies are here. I realized I forgot something important back in Georgia. My dignity. Enjoy the rustic branding. Mom." She turned away from the glowing glass house. Her knees didn't ache anymore. The adrenaline was a new kind of fuel. She walked to the end of the driveway, the snow crunching under her black heels, and pulled out her phone to call a different Uber. "Where to, ma'am?" the new driver asked 5 minutes later. Monica looked at the map. She saw a small pin for a place called Mama Lou's Soul Food, a few miles away in a neighborhood that didn't have glass houses. "Take me to where the lights are warm," Monica said. "And don't worry about the side door. I'm done with those." Why this works for the U.S. YouTube market. The visual contrast. The image of a dignified grandmother standing in the snow, looking through a window at a family that replaced her, is a powerful thumbnail moment. Passive negligence. By having Greg tell her to use the side door, you highlight his subconscious disrespect without making him a cartoon villain. It feels more real. The boss move tease. Monica leaving the pies on the caviar crates is a subtle but stinging insult. It shows she's not just sad, she's starting to get even. Next step. In part 3, we can explore her time at Mama Lou's and the first climax where Greg realizes she's not coming in. Would you like me to continue? Here is the continuation of Monica's story. In part 3, The Epiphany in the Storm, climax 1, we address a crucial continuity detail, her taking the pies back at the last second, and build up to the first major emotional climax. This section is designed to be deeply atmospheric, contrasting the coldness of her son's world with the warmth of her own culture and community. Part 3. The Epiphany in the Storm. The second Uber pulled away from the affluent, snow-hushed streets of the North Shore, carrying Monica back toward the heartbeat of the city. In the back seat, the cardboard pie carrier rested securely on her lap. At the very last second, standing on Greg's icy driveway, she had snatched it back off the caviar crate. She had left the note, but she couldn't leave the pies. They contained her grandmother's spirit, her own blistered hands, and hours of labor. To leave them freezing on a porch for people who would sneer at them felt like a betrayal of her own bloodline. "You okay back there, ma'am?" the driver asked, glancing in the rearview mirror. He was a young black man, probably no older than Greg had been when he first left for college. "I am getting there, baby," Monica said softly, and it was the truth. With every mile that distanced her from the glass house, the heavy, suffocating weight she had carried for years began to lift. The sanctuary of Mama Lou's. The driver dropped her off in a neighborhood where the streetlights buzzed with a faint, amber hum and the sidewalks hadn't been plowed. The wind howled off Lake Michigan, biting through her navy cardigan, but Monica barely felt it. She was looking at the glowing neon sign ahead. Mama Lou's Soul Food, open 365 days. The S in soul was flickering out, and the windows were completely fogged over with condensation, a sure sign of heavy cooking and warm bodies inside. Monica pushed open the heavy wooden door, and a bell jingled cheerfully. Instantly, she was hit by a wall of heat and a symphony of scents that smelled like home. It was the rich, earthy aroma of slow-cooked collard greens with smoked turkey wings, the sharp tang of hot sauce, and the deep golden scent of fried catfish. It didn't smell like a catered corporate event. It smelled like Sunday after church. The diner wasn't full, but it wasn't empty either. At the counter sat an older man in a faded army surplus jacket, staring into a cup of black coffee. In a corner booth, a young couple looked exhausted. a sleeping baby bundled in a puffy coat between them. 2 college students, far from home, were laughing over a shared plate of ribs. They were the city's Thanksgiving strays, the folks who didn't have a grand table to sit at, or a table at all. Behind the counter, a woman with a bright red apron and silver hair woven into neat braids looked up. "Welcome in, sugar. Grab any booth you like. It's warm by the radiator." "Thank you," Monica smiled. She slid into a red vinyl booth that squeaked in protest. She placed her suitcase beside her and set the pie carrier gently on the table. The breaking of bread. A young waitress, looking dead on her feet but offering a genuine smile, came over with a menu. "What can I get you, ma'am? Kitchen's out of yams, but we got plenty of mac and cheese." "Just a pot of hot tea, please," Monica said. Then she looked at the cardboard carrier. She looked at the veteran at the counter, the young parents, the students. She looked back at the waitress. "Actually, baby, do you have some paper plates and plastic forks?" The waitress blinked. "Yes, ma'am." "Bring them. Enough for everyone in here." When the waitress returned with a stack of flimsy white plates, Monica opened the carrier. The rich scent of cinnamon, brown sugar, and perfectly baked sweet potato filled the immediate air, cutting through the smell of the fryer grease. Monica stood up. Her knees didn't ache. She walked over to the veteran first, placing a generous slice of the golden brown pie in front of him. He looked up, startled. "Happy Thanksgiving, sir," Monica said warmly. She walked to the young parents, sliding 2 pieces onto their table. "You look like you need the energy. Happy Thanksgiving." By the time she reached the college kids and gave a slice to Mama Lou and the waitress, the diner had gone quiet. The veteran took a bite. He closed his eyes, his shoulders dropping as if he had just been relieved of a heavy pack. "Lord have mercy," the veteran whispered, his voice thick with sudden emotion. "Ma'am, this tastes exactly like my mother's. I haven't been home to Mississippi in 20 years. It's a Georgia recipe," Monica smiled, sitting back down at her booth with her own slice and her hot tea. "But the love in it speaks the same language." For the next 20 minutes, Mama Lou's diner transformed. It wasn't a room full of strangers anymore. They were talking across tables. The college kids bought the veteran another coffee. The waitress sat down for a 5-minute break to eat her pie, groaning in sheer delight. Monica sat in the corner, eating her pie off a paper plate with a plastic fork. It was the best Thanksgiving meal she had eaten in 15 years. There was no Wedgwood porcelain, no crystal wine glasses, no corporate investors. Just genuine, unfiltered gratitude. The call. Climax 1. Then the silence was shattered by the sound of Amazing Grace. Monica's phone lit up on the Formica table. Greg, mobile. The diners didn't notice the phone, but to Monica, the ringtone suddenly sounded less like a hymn and more like a siren. She stared at the screen. A year ago, a month ago, even 3 hours ago, she would have answered on the first ring, panicked that he was worried about her. She let it ring 3 times. Then, she slid her thumb across the screen and lifted the phone to her ear. She didn't say hello. "Mom?" Greg's voice exploded through the speaker. He wasn't worried. He was furious. "Are you out of your mind? I sent Malene to the side door to get you, and she finds a note on top of a box of caviar. Do you know how much that caviar cost?" Monica took a sip of her tea. "I don't, Greg, but I know exactly how much my dignity costs, and I couldn't afford to leave it on your driveway." "Dignity? Mom? What are you talking about?" The background noise on his end was chaotic. Clinking glasses, hushed, panicked voices. "You made me look like an idiot. I told the Blackwell group we were having an authentic home-style Southern dessert. Where are the pies? Malene is in the kitchen having a panic attack because we have nothing to serve them but store-bought cookies." "Where are the pies?" Not "Mom, it's freezing, where are you?" Not "Mom, did you slip on the ice?" Not "Mom, are you safe?" He only cared about the props for his corporate performance. "The pies are gone, Greg," Monica said, her voice dropping into a register that was eerily calm, smooth as dark molasses. "They are currently being enjoyed by people who know what it means to be grateful." "Grateful? Mom, I bought you a plane ticket. I invited you into my home." "No, Greg," Monica corrected him, the clarity of the moment washing over her like a baptism. "You invited a free caterer. You invited a nanny. You invited a prop to make you look grounded to your investors. You didn't invite your mother. Your mother's seat was already taken." There was a stunned silence on the other end of the line. Greg wasn't used to this tone. He was used to the Monica who compromised, the Monica who smoothed things over, the Monica who signed away her pension to fix his mistakes. "Mom, look, stop being dramatic," Greg stammered, trying to regain control. "Tell me where you are. I'll send an Uber. You can come back, sneak in through the garage, and we can salvage this. Please. I need you to do this for me." Monica looked out the fogged window of the diner. The snow was falling harder now, blanketing the gritty Chicago streets in a layer of pure, untouched white. It was a blank slate. "I spent my whole life building a bridge for you to cross, Greg," Monica said, the words heavy with 30 years of grief, but also with release. "I gave you my savings. I gave you my youth. I gave you my peace. And I was so busy building that bridge, I didn't notice you were using my back as the foundation. Well, my back is tired, and the bridge is closed." "Mom, don't do this. You're ruining my night." "I'm saving mine," Monica replied. "Do not call me again. Have a happy Thanksgiving." She pulled the phone away from her ear. She could hear Greg's voice, a tiny, tinny sound protesting from the speaker. With precise, deliberate movements, Monica opened the side compartment of her phone case. She pulled out her earring, a sharp little silver stud, and pressed it into the tiny pinhole on the side of the iPhone. The SIM card tray popped out. She took the small piece of plastic, the digital tether that had kept her at his beck and call for over a decade, and dropped it into her empty teacup. She didn't cry. There were no tears left for Greg. Instead, she felt a profound, radical lightness. The veteran at the counter raised his coffee mug toward her, giving her a silent, respectful nod. Monica smiled back, picked up her plastic fork, and finished the last bite of her sweet potato pie. Tomorrow, she would call her lawyer. Tomorrow, she would dismantle the financial empire Greg had built on her name. But tonight, she was just Monica. And for the first time in her life, she was exactly where she was supposed to be. Creator notes for YouTube production. 1. Audio/music cues. When Monica is in the Uber, use a cold ambient wind sound. When she opens the door to Mama Lou's, immediately transition to a warm, soulful jazz or subtle gospel piano track. When the phone rings, Amazing Grace, make the ringtone abrupt and jarring, interrupting the cozy atmosphere. When she drops the SIM card into the teacup, add a distinct clink sound effect, followed by total silence for 2 seconds before the music swells again. 2. Visuals, AI prompts. The diner. Inside a cozy, dimly lit soul food diner in Chicago on a snowy night. Warm neon light, steam on the windows, an older black woman sharing pie with diverse, tired-looking city people. Cinematic lighting, heartwarming. The phone call. A close-up of a dignified 62-year-old black woman's face, bathed in the warm light of a diner booth. She is holding a smartphone away from her ear, her expression unbothered, resolute, and powerful. 3. The core message. This climax perfectly executes the passive negligence we discussed. The audience will be furious that Greg asked about the pies before asking about her safety. Her response is the ultimate mic drop moment that viewers in the U.S. market love to clip for TikTok and YouTube Shorts. Would you like me to continue with Part 4, where Monica discovers the truth about the house and teams up with her granddaughter Emma? Here is the continuation of Monica's story. In Part 4, The Ledger and the Legacy, the narrative shifts from emotional heartbreak to calculated righteous action. We explore the financial truths, Twist 3, and introduce the unexpected alliance with her granddaughter, Twist 4, setting the stage for the ultimate confrontation. Part 4. The Ledger and the Legacy. The morning light creeping through the thin curtains of the Mid-City Motor Inn was gray and unforgiving, but to Monica Wexler it felt like a spotlight on a brand new stage. She woke up on a mattress that was too firm, in a room that smelled faintly of industrial bleach and stale coffee. It was a far cry from the high thread count guest room she usually occupied at Greg's house, but as she sat up, swinging her legs over the edge of the bed, she realized something profound. Her chest didn't hurt. The chronic, tight anxiety that usually accompanied her mornings. Did Greg need money? Did Malene need a babysitter? Was she being useful enough? Was entirely gone. On the cheap veneer nightstand sat her iPhone, lifeless and hollowed out. its SIM card still sitting at the bottom of a teacup miles away. Monica stood up, smoothed her nightgown, and walked over to the small laminate desk. She placed her leather handbag on the chair and carefully pulled out the items she had packed from the bottom of her jewelry box in Georgia, the heavy gold signet ring that had belonged to her late husband, Arthur, and the small leather-bound ledger. Twist 3. The Ghost in the Paperwork. Arthur Wexler had been a man of few words but deep roots. He had worked as a structural engineer, a black man who had fought tooth and nail in the 1970s and 80s to build a firm that demanded respect. When he passed away 8 years ago, he left Monica with a paid-off estate, a solid pension, and a piece of advice whispered in his final days. Take care of the boy, Monty, but never let him sell the dirt. The dirt is who we are. Monica opened the ledger. Tucked inside the front cover were the recent legal documents Greg had mailed her last month. He had called them routine tax optimization forms, casually asking her to sign them so his accountant could protect her assets while he structured his new corporate entity. For the past month, she had been meaning to sign them. She had trusted her son implicitly, but looking at them now, under the harsh fluorescent bulb of the motel desk lamp, the legal jargon seemed to jump off the page. Her finger traced the bold heading on the third page. Quitclaim deed. Her breath hitched in her throat. A quitclaim deed. Greg wasn't trying to protect her assets. He was trying to transfer the title of the Georgia estate. The land Arthur had bought, the house where Greg had taken his first steps, the dirt of their ancestors, directly into his holding company's name. He needed the collateral to secure the final massive loan from the Blackwell Group. He needed her to sign away her home so he could build his glass castle higher. He had buried the deed beneath pages of confusing tax jargon, knowing she usually just signed wherever he placed the yellow sticky notes. Monica stared at the blank signature line. A cold, heavy silence settled over her. He hadn't just forgotten her at the airport. He hadn't just replaced her at the dinner table. He had viewed her entirely as a resource to be mined, right down to the roof over her head. She took a red pen from her purse, drew a thick, deliberate line through the signature box, and wrote, "Denied." She closed the ledger. The sadness was officially gone. What replaced it was a terrifying, brilliant clarity. The unexpected knock at 9 a.m., a sharp knock rattled the motel room door. Monica froze. She hadn't told anyone where she was. She had paid for the room in cash, withdrawing it from an ATM a few blocks from Mama Lou's. "Housekeeping?" Monica called out, her voice steady, though her hand instinctively moved toward the heavy metal flashlight the motel provided in the drawer. "Grandma?" "It's me." The voice was small, muffled by the heavy wood, and cracking with cold. Monica immediately unlatched the deadbolt and pulled the door open. Standing in the hallway, shivering in a thin denim jacket that was no match for the Chicago winter, was Emma. Emma was 20 years old, Greg's daughter from his first marriage to a woman he had deemed not ambitious enough once his career took off. Emma had Arthur's dark, expressive eyes and Monica's stubborn chin. She was the one grandchild who always called on Sundays, the one who asked for recipes instead of wire transfers. "Emma, baby," Monica gasped, pulling the freezing girl into the room and shutting the door. "What on earth? How did you find me?" Emma's teeth were chattering as Monica wrapped her own heavy navy cardigan around the girl's shoulders and guided her to the edge of the bed. "I was at the dinner last night," Emma said, her voice shaking as she rubbed her hands together. "I was sitting at this end of the table when Malene lost her mind. She found the note you left on the catering boxes. Dad started screaming at the servers, trying to keep it quiet from the investors. I saw the Uber receipt on Dad's iPad when he threw it on the counter. It said the car dropped you at Mama Lou's." Monica poured a cup of hot water from the cheap motel coffee maker and handed it to her. "You went to the diner?" Emma nodded, gripping the warm styrofoam cup. "First thing this morning, the lady working there. Mama Lou? She wouldn't tell me anything at first. Said she didn't know any Monica. But I showed her a picture of us from my high school graduation. She looked at me, asked me if I liked sweet potato pie, and then told me she saw you walk into this motel across the street." Monica felt a surge of profound gratitude for the unspoken solidarity of black women in the city. Mama Lou had protected her until she was sure Emma was safe. "Why aren't you at your father's house, Emma?" Monica asked softly, sitting beside her. "It's a holiday weekend. You should be warm, eating leftovers." Twist 4. The sins of the father. At that question, Emma finally broke. A sob tore from her throat, raw and agonizing. She leaned into Monica's shoulder, burying her face in the fabric just as she used to when she was a little girl with scraped knees. "There's no leftovers for me, Grandma," Emma cried. "There's no space for me there." Malene made sure of that. But that's not even why I left. I left because of school. Monica frowned, her maternal instincts fully engaged. Emma was a junior at Northwestern University, studying nursing. It was her dream. "What about school, sweetheart? Did you fail a class? You know we can get you a tutor." "I'm dropping out, Grandma," Emma whispered, pulling back to look Monica in the eye. Her face was streaked with tears. "I got a notice from the bursar's office on Wednesday. My tuition hasn't been paid for the semester. They're unenrolling me on Monday." Monica felt the blood roar in her ears. "That's impossible. Your grandfather and I set up a 529 college savings plan for you the day you were born. We fully funded it. There's over $80,000 in that account. Your father is the custodian." Emma shook her head, a bitter, broken smile touching her lips. "I confronted him about it last night, after the guests left. He locked himself in his office, but I wouldn't leave. He finally told me." She took a shaky breath. "He drained it, Grandma. He pulled every cent out of my college fund 6 months ago. He said he needed the liquidity to show the Blackwell Group he had skin in the game. He told me not to be selfish. He said once the company goes public, he'll pay for any medical school I want." Monica sat perfectly still. The silence in the room was absolute, save for the hum of the motel's radiator. Greg hadn't just mortgaged his own soul. He had stolen his daughter's future to build his present. He had taken the money Arthur had painstakingly saved, money meant to ensure the next generation of Wexlers wouldn't have to struggle, and gambled it on an app. "He told me I was being short-sighted," Emma sobbed, wiping her eyes angrily. "He told me I didn't understand how empires are built." Monica slowly stood up. She walked over to the desk, picked up the leather ledger, and looked at Arthur's gold signet ring. She slipped the heavy ring onto her right index finger. It was too big, but it felt like a gauntlet. "He's right about one thing," Monica said, her voice dropping to a low, resonant timbre that commanded the room. "Empires are built on sacrifices. He just forgot who owns the land he's building on." "The War Council." Monica turned back to Emma. The grandmotherly softness was still in her eyes, but her posture had changed. The slight stoop of age had vanished. She stood tall, a matriarch stepping fully into her power. "Emma, look at me," Monica commanded gently. Emma looked up, sniffing. "You are not dropping out of nursing school. You are a Wexler woman. We heal people and we survive. Do you hear me?" Emma nodded, sitting up a little straighter. "Yes, ma'am." "Good." Monica reached into her purse and pulled out a small, prepaid burner phone she had bought at a gas station an hour ago. She punched in a number she knew by heart. It wasn't Greg's number. The line rang twice before a deep, gravelly voice answered. "Sterling and Associates. Leave a message." "Mr. Sterling, this is Monica Wexler," she said into the receiver. "I apologize for calling on a holiday weekend, but I need you to open the office." Elias Sterling was a bulldog of an attorney based in Atlanta, a man who had gone to Morehouse with Arthur and had drawn up the family's original estate plans. "Monica?" The voice on the other end lost its professional detachment, replaced by genuine concern. "Are you all right? Where are you?" "I'm in Chicago, Elias, and I am better than I have been in a decade," Monica said, her eyes locked on Emma. "I need to enact the contingency plans Arthur and I discussed before he passed, the ones regarding Greg's financial access." There was a long pause on the other end of the line. Elias sighed, a sound heavy with history. "He finally crossed the line, didn't he?" "He crossed the line, burned the bridge, and tried to sell the water beneath it," Monica replied flatly. "I am looking at a quitclaim deed he tried to trick me into signing for the Georgia house. He also drained Emma's 529 account. I need everything frozen, Elias. Every account my name is attached to. I want the line of credit to his company revoked. I want my pension separated from his holding firm. And I want to set up an irrevocable trust for the Georgia estate, with Emma as the sole beneficiary." Emma gasped, her hands flying to her mouth. "Monica," Elias said, his lawyerly caution kicking in, "if I pull the line of credit on his holding firm, it will trigger an immediate default on his secondary loans. If he's in the middle of a funding round, this could collapse his entire company." "His company is built on stolen bricks, Elias. Let it fall. Understood, Elias said, his tone turning crisp and professional. I'll have the injunctions filed digitally within the hour. By the time the banks open on Monday, he won't be able to buy a cup of coffee with your money. Thank you, Elias. Have the trust documents ready for me to sign by Tuesday. Monica hung up the burner phone. She looked at Emma, who was staring at her grandmother as if seeing her for the first time. She wasn't just the sweet woman who baked pies and knitted scarves. She was the immovable object. Grandma, Emma whispered, what did you just do? Monica walked over, sat beside her granddaughter, and took Emma's cold hands in her own warm ones. I just stopped being his safety net, baby, Monica said, a small, fierce smile touching her lips. Now get your coat. Let's go find a nice place for breakfast. We have a flight to catch, and we need to plan a trip to Jamaica. I hear the weather this time of year is beautiful. Creator notes for YouTube production. 1. Pacing and emotion. This section shifts the genre from family drama to legal/financial revenge. The audience will feel incredibly satisfied seeing Monica take decisive action, especially after discovering Greg's betrayal of Emma. 2. Visuals. AI prompts. The document. Close-up of an older black woman's hand wearing a heavy gold men's signet ring, crossing out a signature line on a legal document labeled Quitclaim Deed with a red pen. The Alliance. A 62-year-old dignified black woman comforting a crying 20-year-old black college student in a dimly lit motel room. The older woman looks fiercely protective and determined. 3. The hook for Part 5. The audience now knows Greg is about to lose everything financially, but he doesn't know it yet. Part 5 will be the explosive confrontation where Greg tries to bully her, only to realize he is entirely powerless. This concludes Part 4. Would you like me to proceed to the final chapter, Part 5, Climax 2, focusing on the ultimate showdown between Monica, Emma, and Greg? Here is the final chapter of Monica's journey. In Part 5, the final showdown in the first flight, the narrative delivers the ultimate emotional and financial payoff. The tone here shifts from quiet realization to absolute, unshakable power, providing the deeply satisfying conclusion your audience is looking for. Part 5. The Final Showdown and the First Flight. By Tuesday morning, the Mid-City Motor Inn felt less like a cheap motel and more like a war room where a decisive victory had already been mapped out. Monica's suitcase was neatly packed, her navy cardigan brushed free of any Chicago lint, and her posture straight. Beside her, Emma was securing the zipper on her canvas duffel bag, a newfound lightness in her movements. The paperwork from Elias Sterling had been digitally signed, notarized by a mobile notary Monica had hired to come to the motel room, and filed. The accounts were frozen. The lines of credit were severed. The Georgia estate was locked away. Monica was pouring the last 2 cups of motel coffee when the heavy, frantic pounding shook the thin door in its frame. It wasn't a polite knock. It was the sound of a man whose world was collapsing. "Open the door, Mom. I know you're in there." Greg's voice was muffled but unmistakable, frantic and entirely stripped of its usual corporate polish. Emma froze, her eyes wide, glancing at her grandmother. Monica simply took a slow sip of her coffee, set the styrofoam cup down on the laminate desk, and nodded. "Let him in, baby. The ambush." Emma unlatched the deadbolt and stepped back. The door flew open, letting in a blast of freezing hallway air and a furious Greg. He was wearing a $2,000 tailored charcoal suit that looked entirely out of place against the motel's stained floral carpet. Behind him, hovering in the doorway with her arms crossed tightly over a designer wool coat, was Malene. Her face was pale, the curated Thanksgiving smile completely gone. Greg stormed into the center of the room, his eyes darting from the cheap bedspread to Emma, and finally settling on Monica. He looked disheveled. He hadn't slept. "What did you do?" Greg demanded, his voice vibrating with barely contained rage. He held up his smartphone, the screen displaying a cascade of red banking alerts. "I tried to pay the caterers this morning. The card was declined. I called the bank and they told me the primary account holder, you, froze the assets. Do you have any idea what you've done?" Monica remained standing by the desk, her hands folded gracefully in front of her. "I know exactly what I did, Greg. I stopped the bleeding." "The bleeding?" Greg barked a harsh, desperate laugh. "You just slit my throat. The Blackwell Group was supposed to wire the Series B funding today. When their underwriters did a final check, they saw that my holding company's line of credit had vanished. They pulled out, Mom. They pulled the whole deal. Malene stepped into the room, her voice a sharp, accusing hiss. We are ruined, Irene. He leveraged this house on that deal. We could lose everything. Monica looked at her daughter-in-law, her expression completely unreadable. You mean the glass house? The one with the side door? I suppose you'll have to learn to use the front door of a smaller one. The entitlement of the son, Greg ran a hand over his face, trying to pivot from rage to the manipulative charm that had worked on his mother for 40 years. He took a step forward, lowering his voice, attempting to sound like the wounded boy who needed his mother to fix it. Mom, please. I know you were hurt about Thursday. I admit it. I messed up. Malene messed up. We were stressed and we took you for granted. I am sorry. He spread his hands, palms up. But you are punishing me for one bad night by destroying 10 years of my hard work. You're my mother. You are supposed to support me. You owe me a chance to fix this. Monica felt the familiar pull of guilt, the deep maternal instinct to soothe her child. But then she felt the cold, heavy weight of Arthur's signet ring on her finger. She looked at Emma, who was standing quietly in the corner, a victim of Greg's hard work. I don't owe you anything, Greg, Monica said, her voice dropping into a low, resonant register that commanded the absolute silence of the room. And this isn't about one bad night. This is about 15 years of you treating me like an ATM with a pulse. That's not true. It is the absolute truth, Monica fired back, the southern steel finally flashing in her eyes. I paid your mortgage when you started this company. I bought your cars. I paid for your children's private preschools. And in return, I got an invitation to be your free kitchen help while you sat my replacement at the head of the table. You didn't invite me here to be your mother, Greg. You invited me because I was useful. Greg's jaw tightened. The charm vanished, replaced by a cold, calculating glare. Fine. You want to be petty? Be petty. Keep your little pension. I'll just call the broker in Atlanta today. I didn't want to do this, but I'll list the Georgia estate. The market is hot. That land alone will cover the bridge loan I need to keep the company afloat until I find new investors. Malene exhaled a sigh of relief, leaning against the door frame. Thank God. See, Greg? I told you we had a backup. Climax 2. Twist 5. Revealed. Monica didn't blink. She reached into her leather handbag and pulled out a thick, blue legal folder with Elias Sterling's firm logo embossed on the front. She tossed it onto the motel bed. It landed with a heavy, satisfying thud. You can't sell the Georgia estate, Greg, Monica said softly. I have power of attorney, Greg sneered, reaching for the folder. I can do whatever I need to do. You had power of attorney, Monica corrected him. As of 8 a.m. yesterday, that was legally revoked. And as of 9 a.m. this morning, the deed to the Georgia estate, the land, the house, and every cent of my remaining liquid assets were irrevocably transferred. Greg froze, his hand hovering over the folder. He looked up, his face draining of color. Transferred? To who? Monica turned her head and looked warmly at her granddaughter. To the Wexler Family Trust, with Emma as the sole irrevocable beneficiary. The silence that followed was absolute. It was the sound of a man realizing that the ground he thought he stood on had been completely pulled out from under him. What? Malene shrieked, her voice cracking. She glared at Emma. You gave everything to this little dropout? Don't you dare speak to her that way, Monica snapped, stepping between Malene and Emma, her presence suddenly towering in the small room. She is not a dropout. She is a nursing student whose father stole her college fund to pay for your caviar. Greg looked at Emma, betrayal and shock warring on his face. You told her? Emma stood up straight. She didn't shrink under her father's glare. She had Monica's spine now. Yes, Dad. I told her. Because someone had to tell the truth. Greg looked back at Monica, his eyes wide and hollow. Mom, the company, the house, my life here. If I can't access that equity, it's over. I'll have to declare bankruptcy. Then you will declare bankruptcy, Monica said, her voice devoid of pity. You will sell the glass house. You will get a job. You will learn to build a life on your own 2 feet, instead of standing on my neck to reach the top. She picked up the handle of her suitcase and pulled her navy coat over her arm. We are done here, Greg. Come along, Emma. We have a flight to catch. Greg stood perfectly still, paralyzed by the sheer totality of his defeat as his mother and his daughter walked past him. Malene was already in the hallway, pressing her hands to her face, frantically whispering into her phone to someone. As Monica reached the doorway, she stopped and looked back at her son one last time. "Arthur told me to take care of you, Greg," she said quietly. "And for a long time I thought that meant giving you everything you asked for. I was wrong. Sometimes taking care of a man means letting him fall so he can finally learn how to stand up." She closed the door behind her, leaving Greg standing alone in the cheap motel room, surrounded by the consequences of his own making. The first flight. 3 days later, the air was no longer 22 degrees and smelling of exhaust. It was 85 degrees, smelling of sea salt, roasted jerk spices, and blooming hibiscus. Monica Wexler sat in a plush lounge chair on the pristine white sands of Montego Bay, Jamaica. She was wearing a wide-brimmed straw hat, oversized sunglasses, and a vibrant, emerald green sundress that moved beautifully in the ocean breeze. Beside her, Emma was laughing as she tried to balance a towering, colorful drink decorated with 3 paper umbrellas. "Grandma, I still can't believe we just left," Emma smiled, taking a sip of the fruit punch. "I keep expecting my phone to ring." "Let it ring, baby," Monica smiled, adjusting her sunglasses. "We are on island time now." Elias had handled the fallout in Chicago perfectly. Greg's calls were being routed directly to the law firm. Emma's tuition had been paid in full from the new trust, securing her spot for the spring semester. And Monica? For the first time in 40 years, she didn't have a schedule to keep, a meal to cook for ungrateful guests, or a problem to solve. A handsome Jamaican waiter in a crisp white shirt approached their chairs, carrying a silver tray. "Excuse me, beautiful ladies," he smiled warmly, his accent thick and melodious. "Can I get you anything else? Another rum punch for the matriarch?" Monica looked out at the crystal-clear, turquoise water stretching endlessly toward the horizon. She thought about the dark, cramped diner in Chicago. She thought about the heavy pies on the cold driveway. And then she looked at the bright, open sky above her. "Yes, thank you, baby," Monica smiled, taking a deep, liberating breath. "I'll have another, and put it on my tab. I'm paying for myself from now on." The sun beat down, warming her aching knees, warming her soul. The chair at the head of the table in Chicago was empty, but Monica Wexler had finally found her true place in the sun. YouTube creator strategy and title ideas. To maximize the impact of this final chapter on your channel, lean heavily into the satisfying revenge/karma aspect, combined with the empowering self-love theme. Visual hook for the video. Start the video with the B-roll of the luxurious Jamaican beach, using your AI video tools. Then smash cut to the dingy motel room to show the contrast of where she had to go to get her freedom. Required title options. Optimized for your My Parents requirement and SEO. My parents built that estate. When my greedy son betrayed me, I took it all back. I cut off my son to protect what my parents left me, a mother's final lesson. My parents warned me about ungrateful children. At 62, I finally listened. Community tab engagement. Ask your viewers. Was Monica too harsh on Greg at the end, or did he get exactly what he deserved? Let me know below. This will drive massive comment engagement from your target demographic of women 40+.